Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's your boy Uche with another episode. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Before I get started with today's episode, I do want to give an honest apology. As you can see clearly, I do not have my face on today's episode. Normally, if you have been following me for a while, you probably do recognize that I usually have my face on there. I usually have a video, playing, and it's a combination of video and audio podcast. But today, unfortunately, I'm just doing audio. And this is just simply because it's been very busy for the past few months with school. As you guys know, if you guys are in school, this is finals week. Got finals coming up, and I'm combining that with work and all kinds of projects that I'm working on the side. I'm also getting ready to travel, so it's just a lot. And considering the fact that it's just me, I'm the only person doing all of this, so there's only so much a person can handle by themselves. And of course, I also try to be intentional in creating time and space for me to do what I love, which is coming out here and spread the good word. So thank you so much to all the people who support me, who have been supporting me, and the people who don't mind. And hopefully you guys don't mind. So hopefully this does not get me canceled, for lack of better words. And to all the people who've been supporting me for a while, thank you so much for returning. And again, hopefully you guys don't mind. And stay tuned for today's episode. Today we're going to be talking about the concept of God and the concept of angels. As you guys know on here, as I mentioned before, I am a philosopher with a focus on existentialism. Existentialism is basically the study of existence itself. So existence is everything that's within the human confines, life, between life and death, and also everything that's beyond that, so the formless, formed and formless. So the entirety of it, everything that we can understand as humans, and also things that we cannot understand as humans. Of course, this has to do with a lot of deep spirituality. And as a former Christian myself, somebody who used to be I was born Christian, who used to be very devout Christian. I walked away from that Christian faith, finding my own, or seeking my own questions, questioning things and seeking my own answers. And simply because there has been a lot of inconsistencies in what I was raised in the Christian faith. So as a result, a lot of my philosophy involves critiquing Christians and their philosophy or theology, if you want to call it that. But the truth is, I actually, believe it or not, at the core of it, I have deep respect for religion, especially Christianity, because I do understand from a much deeper place what religion is supposed to represent, especially Christianity. But I feel like the problem, though, is that religion, specifically Christianity, I'm not saying that Christianity is worse or better than any other religion. I'm just picking on Christianity right now because this is the religion that I'm most familiar with. But the issue that I have with Christianity, religion in general, but specifically Christianity, is how it has been so polluted with so much ego. It's become so egotistic, so dogmatic, that to the point that I feel like when you have, it's almost impossible to have these honest conversations with a person who identifies as Christians with vulnerability, without ego. I feel like there's just this thing that just turns on when I talk to a lot of Christians, especially African Christians. They try to fight me. I've been cursed out in the name of God. Believe it or not, it's crazy. If you don't believe me, check out my TikTok and read the comments and have fun. I have been cursed out in the name of God. I've had people give me all kinds of death threats just because I have unpopular opinion on Christianity. And to me, as an outsider looking in, that just makes it very unattractive. It makes it very dogmatic. It just seems so noisy to me that I walk away. But once in a while, I do come across people, Christians and non-Christian religious people, who understand where I'm coming from, who respect where I'm coming from, and if they're even open-minded enough, they actually see that a lot of what I say is actually in conformity with the Christian faith when done right. Of course, the definition of rightness and wrongness is something that could be debated, but that's a whole nother conversation. But today I want to talk about the concept of God and the concept of angels. In one of my classes earlier this semester, Medieval and Ancient Philosophy, I asked a question that unfortunately not everyone could answer to my satisfaction, not even the professor himself. And matter of fact, these are two questions, and these are questions in regards to our readings on Thomas Aquinas. Please do not judge me for mispronouncing this man's name. I am African. These words are very foreign to me, but I believe it's called Thomas Aquinas, the theologian and a Christian philosopher. I believe he's Italian, who is known for his opinions, or unpopular opinions rather, on God and angels. So we did a lot of readings on this man and this topic this semester, and I asked two questions. The first question is, one, Christians believe that God is all-knowing, all-present, and all-powerful. And if God is all-knowing and all-powerful and all-present, why does God need angels, helpers in the form of angels, to do God's deeds? That doesn't make any sense to me, because if God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-present, A being that is all of that does not need the help of anyone or anything, because when you think about God, God is supposed to be the epitome of power. God should be able to manifest as God pleases, no matter what, no matter how, without necessarily needing middle men or, beings in the form of angels. And no one could answer that to satisfaction. And the second question that I asked is, a lot of Christians, I don't want to say every Christian because, again, from the outside looking in, a lot of Christians don't seem to agree with every single thing or agree on every single thing, which is why there's so many denominations within Christianity. It's so funny to me just watching from the outside. But that's a whole nother conversation. I don't mean to piss off anyone today. But anyway, a lot of Christians have this belief that both angels and humans have the ability to make choices. But the difference between angels and humans is that when humans make choices that go against God, when humans ask for forgiveness, God forgives them and gives them grace. However, when angels go against God, they do not have grace. They are not forgiven, and they are eternally doomed, condemned in hell. And for me, looking into this, looking in from outside, it doesn't seem like much of a choice. If you have a choice, and if you go against this choice, you are doomed automatically. It seems like humans are the ones who actually realistically have a choice. Like you could choose A or B, and if you choose A, you are good. If you choose B, you sin. However, if you sin, you can also be offered grace and bring you back to A. However, if you are an angel, you better choose A, because anything else, you're just doomed. So it just sounds, to me, it sounds like a robot. It sounds like you don't have a choice. So I was asking, what is the point of having free will as an angel if you don't even realistically have a choice for redemption? And again, no one could answer that realistically. And as usual, I went into my head, try to figure out things myself, from reading and researching, and of course meditating, because a lot of these things, believe it or not, are divine inspired. I know some people roll their eyes when I say these things. That's okay. I'm not here to prove to anyone of my authenticity and genuinity, if that's even a word. However, of course, if you're new here, I've talked about my concept of God in the past. A lot of Christians believe God to be a being. And like I joke, I feel like a lot of Christians worship not God, but they worship Sky Daddy, some white man with gray hair, blue eyes, somewhere in the high clouds, and, white Jesus and all this pretentious nonsense. Again, I don't mean to offend anyone, but this is how truly blunt I feel. I'm just being blunt. This is how I truly feel when it comes to religion. It just cracks me up, honestly, especially when Africans practice religion. To me, it's just hilarious, especially considering the fact of how religion is, Christianity specifically, and Islam also, made its way to Africa, and how all of that has created so much issue in Africa. And as an African, that's very personal to me. So it's just funny. However, I do not subscribe in that God being a being, a man who is also white, even though a lot of Christians may not necessarily admit it. But, the truth is, subconsciously, a lot of Christians think of a white man when they think of God and Jesus. But that's a whole nother conversation. I promise I'm not attacking anyone. I'm just speaking honestly here. Anyway, of course, like I said in the past, if you've been watching my videos, if you've been following me for a while, I do not subscribe to none of that. Instead of defining God as a being, I define God as being itself, as in God is existence in its own nature. So the way I like to describe this is that God is a process. God is a never-ending process, has no beginning, has no end, has no midpoint. We as human beings, though, we are in a point in that being process. We have manifested as humans in this reality, this pseudo reality, if you want to call it that, we understand as humans. But beyond the human reality is infinity, positive and negative infinity. Like there's no beginning, there's no end. And the reason why human beings are unable to see beyond this human reality is because of something I call veil of forgetfulness. Veil of forgetfulness essentially is something that every human being is born with. So this is basically something, or some type of spiritual veil that prevents you from knowing where your soul was before you were born and where you're going. So basically you're confined to the human reality. It's a gift or a curse, depending on how you want to look at it. But I like to look at it as a gift. It's there to protect you so you can focus on your here and now. And your ultimate duty is to align with the goodness, to choose to align with the goodness that courses through you naturally. So you can perform your duty, your purpose in life, and then go back home into what I call the noumena. And then when you go back home, you continue in that process of being. Now, how that process of being with beyond human existence, it works is beyond me. I cannot confidently say that because, again, as a human being occupying space and time, I am only confined within the space of human reality. However, my theory is that beyond this human reality, everything is happening all at once. And I've made this episode a couple of times quoting quantum physics. A lot of quantum physicists believe that time is an illusion. The reason why we seem to perceive time, even though it's an illusion, is because this is how our human mind is able to comprehend and make sense of this reality. But in actuality, time is an illusion. There's no past, there's no present, there's no future. Everything is now. Literally, now is all there is. Now is all there is. Now is all there has ever been. Now is all there will ever be. But the illusion of time is something that our mind is able to conceptualize because of two things being present: movement and observation. Movement and something moving, and observation, us observing those things. And this is how they've been able to map out how long the universe has been around. I believe like 14.8 billion years. So, but if there's no movement and there's no observation, there's still existence. Even though we're not able to conceptualize time, but there's still existence. Again, beyond life and death, beyond the human reality, there's still existence. And within quantum physics, quantum physicists will tell you that existence is just snapshots of everything happening all at once. And the reason why we're not able to time travel is because we don't have the technology to be able to loop from each snapshot to the other. And as a result, we are confined in this linear movement of time, which is an illusion. I know this sounds so crazy and so complicated, but I promise I've talked about this on multiple episodes. Actually, there's an episode, I'm going to try to attach it down below, that I did a few months ago where I talked about now is all you've got. And I did a really good job breaking it down. So please check it out. I described the concept of time being an illusion using the dot of everything. I did a really, really, really good job. A+. Please check it out. I'll do my best to attach it down below. I promise you will not be disappointed. And I know, again, this is all quantum physics, a lot of mathematics, probably a bit complex and too deep for most people. But again, check it out. You will not be disappointed. But that is my definition of God. God is a never-ending process. God is being itself. God is existence itself. God has no beginning, has no end. God is not a being, but rather being. God is formless, as in God is the entirety of everything that exists, 100%. That makes a lot more sense to me than, God being a being. Again, I feel like a lot of these religions, because of ego, I feel like a lot of folks have recreated God in our own fallible image, to the point that when you read about God or when you learn about God from some of these religions, God just sounds so narcissistic, very pretentious, very homophobic, misogynistic. The list just goes on and on and on. God sounds like a very scary person when you look at God from the lenses of religion. But then at the same time, too, they turn around and tell you that God is love. Child, please, that makes no sense whatsoever. But anyway, I can't help but criticize religion. This is what I do, because to show people the mirror that we are the problem. But anyway, lest I digress, I'm going to come back. So yes, that makes more sense for me to define God as being itself rather than a being. And now the concept of angels. Again, like I asked that question in class, no one was able to answer it. It doesn't make any sense to me why God, who is supposedly some supreme being, matter of fact, not just a supreme being, but the epitome of supremacy, needs help. Why does God need help? It makes no sense, and no one was able to answer that in a more tangible, intelligible way for a person like me to, co-sign. And of course, I didn't want to hold up the class because I have a tendency of doing these things. I don't mean to do these. It's just that I have so many questions, and just a lot of things just do not add up at all. But anyway, this is my concept of angels, and bear with me as I break this down, because it may be lengthy, it may be deep. So a lot of us, for the most part, we're so used to hearing the end of the world. The end of the world, doomsday, has been a thing way before I was even born. Even in ancient times, there's a lot of apostles, preachers that have preached about the end of the world is coming soon. Repent, for the kingdom of God is near or nigh, whichever era of English. Growing up, there's always been talks of doomsday. God is coming, Jesus is coming, Jesus is coming. The whole thing that happened in 1999, a lot of people thought the ushering in of 2000 will be the end of the humanity. Even 2012 was supposed to be the end of humanity, and all kinds of nonsense. Humans, we have always been talking about the end of days, how the world will be destroyed either by some type of rock from space, or with nuke ourselves, or biological warfare and all kinds of stuff. And for the most part, I think there is some type of sensibility in that. There's some type of logic. I think we are closer to that, realistically closer to nuking ourselves, eradicating ourselves more than ever before, because of these extremely dangerous technologies that we have invented in the name of security. It makes no sense to me, but hey, it is what it is. It's a very weird world, and I'm just here sipping my tea and eating my popcorn, right? However, in spite of all of that talk about, the world coming to an end, what if imagine this is not the end? Yeah, sure. Maybe something will happen. Maybe some type of biological warfare. Maybe we nuke ourselves. 8 billion people die. But instead of every single one of us dying, let's say 2,000 people are able to remain and repopulate the earth. And the world will become different. And I believe this, by the way. I think this is coming. I think that the end is actually quite near, more than ever. I think winter is coming, like I always say, and it will burn. It will burn in such a very painful way. Matter of fact, Jesus talks about this in Matthew, how the end of the world will come, and it will be a very painful time to be alive. It'll be a very painful time to be, I think he said something along the lines of, it will be a very painful time to be pregnant and nursing a baby, or something like that. But then he also did promise, I will be with you to the end, so don't fear. And he also did say that it will be short-lived, so do not be afraid. But I do believe that it's coming, and I think that this winter that is coming is going to burn, because it will burn off all the impurities, all the perversions that we have created for ourselves in the name of ego. And I think a different state of consciousness will unlock in humans, and life will be repopulated but from an egoless perspective. I believe that the ego will die. The reason why the ego will die is because life will be so hard that the ego would not have space to exist. I feel like it will usher in a new perspective and consciousness where people can actually see that I need you just like you need me. Hurting you is hurting me. We need to work together. Like, I think this will be a next level of spiritual evolution, and the world will be so different, unrecognizable almost. And then from there, maybe those 2,000 people who did not die, who made it, they will repopulate the earth and grow, in numbers from there. Technology will continue and so on and so forth. Look at the amount of technology we've achieved today. I mean, I don't mean to disrespect what we have done, or the scientists, or the physicists, or everyone who has invented whatever it is. Yes, truly, a lot of things that we use today are very impressive. Yes, cell phones and computers and airplanes and flying into space and all kinds of things, right? There's a very impressive. But what we have actually achieved is actually quite mediocre compared to the infinity of knowledge that we can tap into. If this world, a lot of things that we do is actually based on love and emotional intelligence. A lot of things that we have been able to achieve, not everything, but a lot of things that we have been able to achieve has been based on narcissism and capitalism. It's been from the healthcare systems, from all this weak technologies and quite lame gadgets that these companies keep producing every year, and having people keep buying them every year because someone is feeding their pockets type of situation. It's being fueled by narcissism, egoism, and capitalism. But imagine, and this is what we have been able to achieve as a result of that, which is actually quite mediocre. The reason why a lot of people don't think that what we have right now is mediocre is because this is the best that we have been able to see. If we had something else much better to compare with, we'd actually be able to see, yes, indeed, what we do have is mediocre. Perfect example to describe this is, imagine going on YouTube and typing in a YouTube video typing into YouTube a video that you used to watch when you're much younger, a video that you enjoyed so much, let's say 20 years ago, a video that you used to watch, maybe a music video, movie that you used to watch, and remember how very serene it felt, how very magical it felt watching that video for the first time 20 years ago, compared to what that quality looks like today. You see how pixelated, how low quality the video is, even though as a kid, maybe 20 years ago, when you were watching that video, it didn't really feel like that. The reason why it didn't feel like that back then is because you had never seen anything better than that when it comes to video quality. But today, fast forward, because we have so much technology to produce much better qualities, you've been able to see 1080p, you've been able to see 4K, even some people have access to 8K or even more. Now your eyes have been adjusted, your eyes and your mind have adjusted to something much better than the quality that you saw 20 years ago. And now you'll be able to see, oh shoot, actually that was actually quite poor quality. Yes, you still be able to appreciate the history, maybe the nostalgia it's able to evoke within you, but in quality wise, you'll be able to recognize, yes, there's something definitely much better. But the reason why I didn't think it was much better back then is because you didn't have anything much better to compare with. As I mentioned here, I'm Nigerian, born and raised in Nigeria till age 15. And when I moved to America at age 15, it took me about 10 years to go back to Nigeria at 25 years old. When I lived in Nigeria in my city, little city of Aba, Aba was all I knew. I had never really left Aba for any reason particularly. Maybe I've been to some big cities here and there, maybe Lagos or Port Harcourt, but for the most part, my life was just in Nigeria and specifically in Aba. And because I didn't really have anything to compare Aba with, Aba was just home. It was just normal. But it wasn't until when I was 25 years old, when I went back to Nigeria at 25 years old, that for the first time, everything looked different. I noticed the roads look so small, and I was like, why is the road so small? But then this is also because I'm coming from Texas, where we have some of the biggest freeways. Everything in Houston, in America for the most part, but in Texas specifically, is so huge. And also, having traveled the world, I've been exposed to so much. Aesthetics is something that's so big, especially in the Western countries. And then when I went back to Nigeria for the first time, I remember mentioning to my buddy that it looks like everything is rotting, like the buildings are rotting, and he laughed and he thought I was just joking. I was not joking. That's what it felt like. But then even though when I lived in Nigeria, it didn't feel like it was rotting, it felt like normal. But that's because I have been exposed to something much better, that now I'm able to go back and be like, ooh, this is actually quite mediocre what we had. The exact same effect is here as well. I'm sure there's some type of fancy title and fancy name for this in psychology. I'm not a psychologist, but this is common sense. I don't need to have a psychology degree to be able to figure these things out, right? Because it's common sense. Same thing too, when we think about the technology that we have today, again, shout out to every single person who has done the best that they have to produce what we have. I mean, I'm a beneficiary of, when it comes to internet, social media, cell phones, airplanes, and so on and so forth. I definitely do appreciate it. But also, the things that we have today is actually quite mediocre, especially considering the fact that a lot of the things that have fueled those things have been narcissism and capitalism. Again, not everyone, but for the most part, a lot of these first world countries and powerful countries and, world leaders have been fueled on GDP and ego and, all kinds of nonsense. But imagine in this ushering in of new consciousness, new level of spiritual evolution, the world is able to repopulate from a place of egolessness, and we're able to tap into that technology or the infinity of knowledge and create from there. Imagine going from 2,000 people, how the world can repopulate in 50 years, in 100 years, in 500 years, in 1,000 years, in 1,000,000 years, in 1,000,000,000 years, in 100 billions to the billionth year. Of course, I'm sure, with that kind of exponential growth in technology, we probably would not be able to identify as humans because they probably have evolved to something else. But imagine what the offsprings of those 2,000 people that will remain on Earth will be able to transcend into in the next 100 billion to the 100th billion. I'm not a genius and I cannot necessarily tell the future, but my common sense is telling me that between now and 100 to the power of 100 billion years from now, I feel like at least one of our offsprings will be able to figure out that truly time is an illusion, and they'll be able to tap into the dimension of being able to travel between space and time. So which means, considering the fact that I've mentioned in the past, physicists have talked about this, time being an illusion. Everything is actually happening all at once. Every single thing, the birth of the universe is happening right now. The end of the universe is happening right now. Your birth is happening right now. Your death is happening right now. You just experience it in a linear fashion as a human being, because as a human being, your reality is confined within this three-dimensional plane of linear time, if that makes any sense. But a being that has been able to transcend beyond this third dimension in a fourth, fifth, and so on dimension will be able to understand this. They'll be able to understand that truly time is an illusion. And if time is an illusion, they'll be able to see why, and they'll be able to travel between time. So which means the existence that we are able to envision to be happening in 100 to the 100 billion years from today is already happening. Matter of fact, those beings don't just exist, they are here already. Yes, I know it sounds eerie. I know it sounds so crazy to think. Even me right now, I'm recording this in my home office. I know that those beings are here right now, watching me. Isn't that cool? It's really interesting to think that beings and maybe creatures or creations, whatever it is that you want to call it, maybe creatures and beings doesn't even do justice to explain what these beings or creatures are from far future because of this, how I'm able to understand it as a human being occupying space and time. But the reality is that, again, considering the fact that everything is happening all at once, they already exist and they are already here. But then the thing is, there's order, there's balance. They cannot necessarily interfere with this reality beyond what they have permission to interfere. And this permission is just basically the balance that holds everything together. You can call this God. And I believe this is what angels are, right? Within this human reality, or pseudo reality as I like to call it, phenomenological reality, more realistically, right? This physical reality, I believe, this is just my theory and I could be wrong, I believe that humans are the only physical creatures or creations who have the ability to choose to go against what course is natural. And this is because of the ego. And I've talked about the ego, how the ego attaches itself to humans, quoting things from the Bible, the Garden of Adam and Eve. The ego is basically Lucifer or Satan, the serpent, or father of lies. I've talked about this on multiple episodes. Check out the rest of my episodes. I've done a pretty good job breaking these things down for so long, so I do not want to bore you here. This is because the ego attaches itself to humans, and humans are the only physical creations in this reality that have the ability to choose to go against God, if you want to call it that. But basically, God is everything that flows natural. So everything that flows natural within us, we're the only people that choose to go against it. So we lie, we pretend, we do all kinds of things. And of course, the more we do those things, we create sin, we create pain and subsequently suffering, sin being pain and suffering being hell, and so on and so forth. Again, I've done pretty good jobs breaking these things down as to how it works. But just because within the physical reality, humans are the only physical beings that have the ability to go against God, that which flows naturally, which we know we ought to do. We go against it. That does not mean that humans are the only creations that have the ability to go against that which flows natural. Humans might be the only physical creations, but there are also non-physical creations that have been able to tap into an extremely high level of consciousness, and they too have the ability to choose to go against it for whatever reasons. I may not necessarily be able to fully understand these reasons right now as Uche, as a human being occupying space and time. But that does not negate the fact that it is still very much possible. And I believe that this is where the 1/3 of angels falls into place. Now you have to understand the people who wrote the Bible with their illiteracy, not to disrespect them, but it's also true. When you compare people who wrote the Bible who existed 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 years ago compared to, what we know now. Imagine somebody from 5,000 years ago trying to describe an airplane. They'll probably describe it in some context and words that makes sense to them. It sounds very magical and very mystical to them, but to us, we understand that, okay, there's nothing magical here. This is actually, we've been able to learn how to manipulate forces of nature and physics and things like that. It's pretty straightforward for the most part. Same thing to the people who describe these angels. They probably describe angels, when they're talking about the wings and the blinding lights and the chariots and all of that. They're probably using whatever lingo that they could muster to describe something that their mind and the reality, because of lack of technology and education, is not able to comprehend. Same thing too, the nature of angels, or these beings rather, these beings in the future, is going to be totally different to anything that I can muster, that I can try to describe. But I can try to use some intuition, I can try to use some, common sense and all kinds of stuff, right, to try to describe this, but I still will not be able to do justice on the true nature and reality of these beings. But I do believe that these beings operate in ways that are beyond my comprehension, and these beings must follow the order that is encased within this dot of everything, as I call it, this order of being itself. And there are some of them that are still, I believe that, for the most part, if we go with what the Bible says, 3/3 of them are still in alignment with that goodness, that natural goodness, whatever that goodness is, but it's still there. They're still very much in reverence to it, in conformity to it, in alignment to it, and they have been been gifted with the knowledge and consciousness to be able to, guide and protect not just humans, but especially humans, of course, because, we basically need babysitters. If not, we'll go extinct. And also they would not exist if we didn't exist, right? Because it's a whole linear thing, right? They've been gifted with that duty of protecting and guiding and watching over the universe, the cosmos, and everything beyond. But that does not negate the fact that there's still some of them that could go against that order. Now, going against that order, rebelling against God and sinning against God and fallen angels, it could also be how we human beings would perceive it. I like to argue that even that rebelling against God, that 1/3 going against God, is also still within the goodness that courses through the entire universe, because God is good and only goodness can come from goodness, right? God is good and the epitome of goodness, and a good God can only create goodness. So even though we perceive it as good and evil, I believe that there's no such thing as good and evil. Objective morality is not really a thing, but that's a whole nother conversation, because again, I do not want to piss people off too much, but I do believe that all is good, like all of that is all one. It's all working in congruence with the image of God. It's just that we have to be humble enough to admit that we don't necessarily understand the nuances of how God operates, and we would never really be able to understand it, not with our finite mind, but that's a whole nother conversation, like I said. And then the Bible also, of course, talks about hierarchy of angels. Hierarchy here could just be levels of consciousness. Let's say those beings in the next, I don't know, million years, that there are beings who have the consciousness to be able to tap into something that we are not able to tap into right now. They will be in a higher hierarchy compared to us humans, right? And then a billion years from then, a billion years from that million years in the future, those beings probably could have evolved to something more sophisticated beings in different dimensions that are able to tap into something that the beings that are a million years in front of us may not necessarily be able to understand and tap into, and so on and so forth. So that's probably what it is about hierarchies. And I know the Bible talks about how angels are at the service of mankind, and also, matter of fact, the higher in level an angel is, the more duty they have to serve the lesser angels. And this is because the ones who are much higher understand something that the ones that are lower do not understand. Sort of like us as humans, we have, quote unquote, arguably, depends on who you ask, better and more sharper consciousness compared to animals. This is why we take care of animals. We care for animals. Animals don't necessarily have the consciousness to care for themselves per se. So us who have a wider understanding, wider, deeper consciousness, we are able to see what animals cannot see, and we can care for animals in ways that they're not necessarily able to care for themselves when left alone, and so on and so forth. So I believe that this is a more practical and more reasonable definition of God and angels. And honestly, if I'm being honest, I don't think this is too far from biblical text, if I'm being honest. But the issue that I have with a lot of people who read biblical texts and religious texts is that they read it so literally, which I think is also quite laughable, considering the fact that you're literally reading scribbles by somebody who does not have the level of education from far back and before education was a thing. You're taking people's words literally. These texts and scribbles were written by people who didn't even know the concept of toilet paper, who don't know the concept of hygiene. They don't know the concept of education as we have been able to tap into. You're reading it so literally. I think, yes, of course, those people, they were divinely inspired. Very true. A lot of them, I would not take that away from them, but I think we ought to read these things from a place of pragmatism, realisticness, and spiritual discernment. So that way we're able to get the concrete truth from their message and be humble enough to understand that God's ways is not the ways of man. So there's no need to bring ego and dogmatism into these religious fights. At the end of the day, we're all humans, and just like the Bible said, no human is better than the other. So let's stay humble, admitting that we don't know anything. Even me, I've talked about these things all the times, that I don't know anything. I could be wrong. I've been open-minded enough to admit that I could be wrong, which is why I leave these comments open for people to be able to challenge me. I just ask that you're respectful. Some people, unfortunately, especially on TikTok, don't seem to be respectful, which to me leaves an even more horrible taste in my mouth, because they're like, okay, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I highly doubt that what you're talking about is the truth. And I think this is the mentality a lot of religious people need to adopt, humility in talking about these things as open-mindedly as possible. Open-mindedness just basically means that you're open to hear people, listen to people, at least be open-minded enough to follow their logic. If you follow their logic and their logic, you see so much inconsistencies in their logic, then you can challenge it from a place of love. This is effective communication. You don't have to accept somebody's ideology just because you're open-minded. Be open-minded enough to hear them, and then challenge them from a place of love, challenge them from a place of logic as well. And at the end of the day, if both of you do not agree, you agree to disagree, and that's it. It should not create animosity and tension and hostility between both of you. At the end of the day, we're all seekers, at least we should be, and that's what religion is supposed to be all about. Because at the end of the day, when two or more are gathered in the name of God, God is there. And what is God? God is love, divine love, not conditional love, but divine love. And love is basically emotional intelligence, putting myself in your position and you putting yourself in my position. I hear you out because I want to be heard. You hear me because you want to be heard. And I treat you with love and dignity and respect that you deserve. And I believe that when we do that, that is true religion. That is the presence of God. And I feel like, unfortunately, this is something you don't get enough of when it comes to religious people. And I think that is so unfortunate. Anyway, this is the end of today's episode. Please let me know how you feel about this topic. Do you agree with me on the concept of time being an illusion and everything happening all at once, just as quantum physics has definitely defined? Do you also agree with my definition of God being itself, and basically existence itself, and not a being, especially a white man sitting somewhere in the clouds? Do you also agree with me on my concept of angels? And if you do not agree with me, please share your thoughts down below. I look forward to reading some of these comments, especially on TikTok. I just ask that you're respectful or not. Either way, it makes no difference to me. I have thick skin. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just doing what God has put me in this world to do, and at the end of the day, I go home in peace. It is what it is. So anyway, let me know if you enjoy my vibe. If you enjoy these type of topics, please make sure to download, subscribe, share with your friends and family, hit that bell notification so that anytime I upload a video, you'll be notified instantly. Feel free to follow me on socials. My Instagram is UC_images. My TikTok is LTAU with Uche. My email address is letstalkwithuche@gmail.com. Thank you so much for your wonderful support. Until next episode, Uche, peace and love.